Yeah, so make sure you include that.
Yeah, I will. I will make sure to include this for sure. So I interviewed my grandpa Don during the time he was in high school at San Jose, California. He was born in 1950, so in like that 65 to 69 area where the draft got pretty big, he wasn't eligible until senior year, kind of late in the year. I know that. Um, he said during the war he just had a group of friends, and he remembers being like incredibly anti-war. My grandpa's a pacifist. He doesn't like violence like at all. He was very anti-draft, anti-war. He didn't agree with like any of the politics and going on at the time. He participated in a lot of anti-war rallies. I know in his senior year, two of his friends got drafted. I know one of them, unfortunately, did not come back from Vietnam, and I remember that's when his anti-war beliefs got like a lot more severe and whatnot. Um, Something that interests me a lot about one of the questions interviewed was the opinions he had about Lyndon B. Johnson and Robert McNamara. He said that he just had a ton of animosity towards both of them. He thought both of them were escalating really unnecessarily. He thought it was very pointless that they were still in the Vietnam. He thought they should have pulled out almost instantly once they realized. And once he realized that they were losing and that got out to the public, he just didn't understand why we stayed in there that whole time. He thought it was just horrible, and it made no sense to him. He didn't get drafted, once again, like I said, because he was in high school during that huge drafting time. I do know he went to San Jose State and UC Davis for college, so I'm assuming that college has a huge part to play in why he wasn't drafted when he was 18. I don't know his draft number, though, so that could also be a pretty large factor in it. The lesson for question number 9, the lesson that he told me and that he learned from it is to not act recklessly from what your ambitions are. He says that because when he was first learning about the war, he thought it was just to help South Vietnamese and protect democracy. But once he realized that it was about like the Cold War and communism, he realized that the USA's ambitions were to look more powerful, and he thought we acted pretty recklessly about that. And the other lesson he said is a lot more vague, but he said just not to bite off more than you can chew. He thought we were staying there way too long and lost way too much. For Robert McNamara's question on number 7, part A, it says that human beings must stop killing each other. He said that he believes that very strongly. He believes that's a huge part of why we were in the war for so long. Like I said, he's a pacifist, so obviously he's going to agree with that statement. But that was a really detailed question that I think I got a lot of information on. So that's just something he believes in. He participated in a lot of these movements, especially when MLK died during that time period. He believed that even more thoroughly because he thought that not only is it just a horrible situation in Vietnam right now, but the fact that we're still killing people in America when we're trying to be better. He believed that was just awful, and that the statement that McNamara's wife said was even more true.
Did you ask him about doing evil? You must do evil to something you're good.
I did actually, and he said that he doesn't really know how to answer that question because he knows logically it's correct. He understands that question, he understands that it's right at times. But his morals and his ethics tell him that that's just completely wrong and it should be wrong. But he kind of gave me like a 50-50 there because he knows it's right and he knows it's true, but he can't necessarily stand by it. Really.
See that? How old is he?
He's born in 50. I don't know when, so he's around 74, 75, probably.
So he was like, yeah. 18, 19.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And do you know, was he involved in the anti-war protests?
I didn't ask specifically which one. I know he participated in probably like smaller rallies, though. I don't know if he was in any bigger ones.
All right. That sounds like a good interview. Good job. All right, good. He might have missed the draft number or got one when it was already kind of too late. All right, give me 1 sec. I lost something. Give me 1 second. All right, Trinity, are you ready? Hi. Let me see if I real quick.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So I interviewed my grandpa on my mom's side. His name's Dave. Um, he was drafted in 1967 and he served until 1970, and that's when he got married to my grandma, so that's how he got back. He served in, well, like what he said was he served instead of his brother, but his brother just dodged the draft by getting married and moving. So he served, his older brother didn't, and he didn't really know why he was serving or like why they were stationed in Vietnam. And just the whole time he was blaming the president and the government, and he just didn't really understand what they were doing there. He felt that the draft was just unfair. He didn't see like why they decided to do it the way they did. He just thought it was unfair the whole time. He knew that when he was drafted that his personal goal while serving was just to survive and do whatever his commanding officer told him to do. Again, he didn't understand why they were there, so the whole time he just wanted to survive. From the start, he always believed that it was all just unfair, and he felt he was in the dark about the reasons they were being drafted. And he says he knows that how the people he was around felt the same. And he says that when he came back, it was impossible for him to trust the government, and anything involving the federal office he questions to this day. He says he doesn't believe in the decision to even be there in the first place. He just didn't understand what was going on. On the McNamara quote, he says that it's interesting that he says that about the Quaker killing himself, but he was the one to help decide to escalate the war and cause the deaths that he caused, and he blames the government for all of those deaths. He also says it's sad that that's what for the how much evil must we do. He says it's sad that that's what people feel like they have to do just to stop killing and to stop wars. And he agrees with that quote to a degree, but he doesn't believe that it was necessary to take it up to the degree that we did in the Vietnam War and with other wars that we were in, like Afghanistan and Iraq. He just doesn't think it was necessary for us to do that. One memory that he shared with me is that he remembers one time that he was asked by one of his commanding officers to lead in a convoy, and he didn't want to do it, so his best friend volunteered to do it in place of him, and his friend ended up dying in that convoy, and he says that that should have been him. The lesson that he shared was that time is precious and that he understands war is necessary in certain involvements, but it never feels worth it with the amount of lives that are lost.
That's really sad about his friend. That's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
So was he in the army?
He was, yeah.
And he spent a year in Vietnam?
He spent, what was it? I think he spent 3 years, or 2.5.
And what did he do? You know what
He just said infantry. I don't really know what that means. So
infantry combat soldiers.
Yeah. He was like in it, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Did you know that much about him?
I did not. He doesn't like to talk about it. He's very like it was definitely scary talking to him about it because I didn't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to
push.
Sounds like he told you a lot.
No, he didn't.
Well, you know.
Just like he was vague. He was vague.
It was more about his opinions on the draft.
Yeah.
And I agree that last quote. I was one. A couple people have said that. It is sad.
Yeah.
To do evil, and to do good. Yeah. All right. Good job. Connor, you have to leave. Put you in the stocks. I got a chisel. Good job. All right, who would like to go? Who's going to go next? Was it Ellen? Weren't you going to go?
Can I get my notes?
What's supposed to happen? All right. I think I threw them all away.
I have notes. It's okay.
No. Now I gotta find them. What did I do with those? I literally had them in my hand.
I'm getting back down.
Now everyone's gotta wait for me because I'm annoyed that I can't find them. Here they are.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I interviewed my uncle. His name is Sean. He was born, I think, in 1949. At the time, he was in college, but he didn't go to college to get away from the draft. It's just his mom made him go to college. Yeah. And at first, he supported the war, and he thought that he thought it was good because America was fighting off the communists in Vietnam. But then as it went on, he was like, no, that's not that great. He thought the war got too political near the end, and he didn't think it was good towards the end. He thought the draft was unfair. He talked about that a lot because he was in college, so he was exempt, so he was like, it's so unfair for everyone who couldn't go to college. And then he said he had 4 cousins that got drafted, and he said that they all got shot in Vietnam, but they all lived. So yeah, as the war went on, he said it got too political, and he said that we weren't fighting for like the U.S., that we were fighting for a different country, and he thought that was kind of weird. And then at the time, he did not like Robert McNamara at all. He called him a liar, and he said that McNamara was smart, but like not good for the war. And he said it was the worst thing for politicians to get involved. And he also didn't like Johnson and McNamara because he said that they like the Agent Orange stuff. Because he said his dad got poisoning from it, so that was really sad. And he said that that was just horrible. About Norman Morrison, he didn't say much about what McNamara said, but he said that for Morrison, that he gets the point, but he thought it was a little too far to like do that. He also said that at the time there was a lot of drugs that came from Vietnam, like the soldiers brought drugs back, and that like you could find drugs everywhere. For today, he talked about Afghanistan and how they didn't really learn, and they sent soldiers there. They didn't learn from Vietnam. It was really sad. And he said that we're kind of learning now more because we're hesitant with the Ukraine stuff. And he feels, yeah, he said we were fighting from a distance, which was better than getting directly involved. And yeah.
Did you ask him any other, did you ask him about the, did you ask him one quote about Morrison? Did you ask him about how much Eagle months you do in order to do
Yeah,
good?
he didn't go into that at all. He did not talk about that.
How old is he?
He's in his 70s.
So he's kind of a young man. Did he know anybody who was drafted or?
Yeah, he had 4 cousins, and then he also had a friend. And he said everyone everyone that he knew went straight to the front lines.
But he didn't say anything about what happened to him when he got back or?
No.
All right, well, yeah, it sounds like he definitely had an attitude towards it. Agent Orange's father was there, is that what he said?
Yeah, he said his father was like a colonel in the war.
Oh.
He was there for like 2 years and then like left. I don't know why. He didn't say why his dad left. Yeah, and then his dad got the poisoning from it.
Cancer was a big, that's what my uncle died of cancer. So, all right, good job. Chris, you wanna go? So turn on the projector on your way. You see a little on button, and you gotta pull the screen down. You got a lot of work to do. You're gonna be really busy.
The blue book?
Yeah. And pull the screen down, and I'll get it all set up for you, maybe. Go back and find the pictures. There we go. Give me 1 sec while it warms up. So when you want the picture, I'll just move it over to the screen. Just tell me what you want. Okay. Just give it a sec. Should have turned it on earlier. I blame society.
It's always society.
How come I have a link to generic non-PNP monitor? What the heck is that? Okay, go ahead.
So first, some background information. Her father, so this talk about my grandmother, her name is Lillian, and this is on my dad's side. Her father was originally drafted in World War II, and he was originally born in Minnesota, and he moved to California and then was drafted. And then after Japan surrendered, because of the peace treaty, he moved to Japan as part of the peace treaty, which is where he met my grandmother's mother. Her name was Hiroko, and also his name was Edward. So I have the 2 pictures. One should be of a family of 4, and one should be of this one. So above left is Edward. I don't remember if this was when he was still part of the military or after he retired from the military and went to selling insurance. His mother, and then that is my grandmother Lillian, and then her cousin, I believe. And then the next picture, that is a picture of my grandmother's mother, Hiroko. And then, so my grandmother was born in 1949 in Japan, and they moved back to America. They moved to Colorado. They then went back to California and then to Washington, all within the span of a couple of years, because they were a military family. The military was constantly moving them around and causing them to move to different places. But they eventually stayed in Washington. For most of the war, she was in high school, a little bit of middle school, but near the very end, and college. Going on through the questions, the first question, what was she doing during the Vietnam War? So she was in high school, college, and she was not part of the U.S. military. And she thought of military service, she kind of saw it as just necessary, or was kind of used to it. Her family had all been in the military her father and then his father were all in the military, so she had gotten used to it. This was a part of her life. And then on to question 2, what did she think about the involvement, United States involvement in Vietnam? She originally at first thought, oh, they're doing it for some good cause, probably. They're fighting some great war out there to defeat some evil. But as time went on, she started to wonder, why is this still going? Why do we keep sending men here? What is actually going on that they might be hiding? She started to question it more and more. And then, what did she feel about the draft? Was she or anyone close drafted? She wasn't drafted, but she knew plenty of people that were drafted. First of all, her father, but also she was married to 2 people. She had gotten married, divorced, remarried. Both of them had been drafted before marriage, and her 2 sons actually enlisted. This is after the Vietnam War, but they went to join the Navy. So the draft was just kind of natural. She was used to it. But she did feel that a lot of families were losing big parts of themselves. She understood that a lot of families were losing sons that they would never see again or fathers that would never return. On to question 4, she wasn't serving in the military, so can't respond to that. Question 5, did your view of the war as U.S. policy change as the war unfolded? Yes. At first, she trusted the U.S. She's like, what, they're probably doing something good. But as time went on, nope. She was starting to think, okay, they're doing some bad stuff, especially with the news that was reporting all the violence going on in Vietnam, such as the South Vietnamese shooting a North Vietnam spy. Yeah. So she remembered that. She remembered seeing that picture and being like, this is just awful. Going on to question 6, during the war years, you believe that President Johnson, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara correctly analyzed the situation in Southeast Asia? She feels like it's hard to determine what was actually, like, correct. There were so many people that were involved that it's hard to say what was directly the correct move for anyone. But she did feel one thing was incorrect. She felt that they were just sending way too many people. She felt that it became a thing of, oh, we're just going to send bodies into the flames and they'll be fine. And she felt that they should have been drafting less and less. Question 7, which are the quotes. She did respond to both. For quote A, she believes that, so to the quote, humans, beings must stop killing other human beings, she agrees with that. We need to stop because it's just an endless cycle. But she doesn't know if McNamara directly believed that, like he says it does. Because McNamara is one of the reasons we were in the war for so long. He was making a lot of these calls. With the second one, how much evil must we do in order to do good? And this was a difficult one because what defines evil for us? Is it evil because it's inherent, or is it evil just because it opposes us? Were we sending stuff to North Vietnam because they were a threat to all the world, or because they didn't have the same beliefs as us? Hindsight being what it was, she says, if we look back, were they evil, or did they just have different beliefs than us? And then on to 8, one specific memory she had was learning about people being drafted that she specifically knew. After high school and her going to college, she remembered how either people would be drafted, some students she also knew, or they would enlist so that they could get college education. One specific friend she remembered was a friend who ended up becoming a pilot, a helicopter pilot, and she remembered talking to someone and hearing that he had been gunned down and died. All she remembers from then on is just crying for the next 2 days. That's all she remembers. And then 9, what lessons for Americans today do you see in the Vietnam War experience? And for that, she asks, kind of going back to quote B, of how much evil do we need? How many lives are we going to lose to end war? We can't end war. War is something that's going to keep happening no matter what. The best we can do is try to avoid it by making correct decisions. And that's the best we can do. But even if we do end up in war, we shouldn't just resort to violence. We need to learn more than that. If we're going to send soldiers out, they shouldn't just know war. That's something she told her 2 kids when they enlisted, including my father. My father enlisted in the Navy. Of if you're going to join the military, don't just know how to kill someone, learn something else. That way, when you're out, and if you survive, that you will have something. Questions?
Good. And so she was like 19 during TED. Did she follow the war that much when she was as a teen?
The marches against the war?
Yeah, like the war, what was going on in the war.
So I did not specifically ask if she joined the marches, but I think no, because she had to deal with college, because she originally went to a private college, but then she completely ran out of money. So she had to go to community college for the next 3 years. And also her family had been going through some financial issues, I heard, because of a lot of war tensions and whatnot. Especially because her mother, because the dad was drafted, was working in a diner and wasn't able to actually take care of her as a child. So my grandma actually ended up staying with her grandparents a lot of the time because the mother had to be working so much.
Let's look at the other pictures. What do we have here?
So the next one is also somewhat, this is her with her 2 kids. So this is her when living in Washington. And I can't remember exact age, it's 20 something.
Yeah.
And then I have one last image. It's not part of these 3, it's a separate message, but I also have a
Let me go back. I gotta move it.
picture of the last, it was made 2 years ago, is when the picture was taken. So just Mario to show where she is today. So that is my grandma. And she
That's a great
has
picture.
shrunken considerably when she was younger, but
Never would have guessed you'd be taller than her. Okay, so, all right, good job. All right.
Sure.
Give me 1 sec. And then, lower. No.
Okay, so I interviewed my coworker Terry and her husband Jeff. Terry was in Anaconda in school. She didn't exactly remember what grade she was in. Jeff was in high school. He graduated June of 1973, and he turned 18 February of that year. He felt very lucky because he didn't really have a chance at being drafted. So he got to finish high school and didn't feel pressured to go straight into college. Neither of them were enlisted or drafted into the military. My coworker Terry felt that the draft was very unfair and sexist, and there was a lot of economic advantages. And she had a brother of a friend ended up actually moving to Canada to escape the draft. Jeff considered enlisting in the military in early high school and even took the aptitude exams. His grandpa was a soldier in World War I, and his dad was a medic in World War II. So he thought it was a really good environment to mature and learn self-discipline in. But then as he got more exposure, he started to lose respect for the military, and by the end of high school, he wanted nothing to do with the military at all. At the time, Terry thought that we were trying to help a floundering democracy. Her mom was a very firm believer in the domino theory, and the whole family thought that they were there to maintain current South Vietnamese government and not install our form of democracy. Jeff had vague experiences with the domino theory and thought it was a very naive way of thinking. He and his family listened to the nightly news every night, and they had body counts for the day and then the overall body counts, and the numbers were counteracting what the politicians were telling everybody. He witnessed protests. He was actually at Helena High and remembered that the upperclassmen were wearing t-shirts with targets on them with the quote, "They shoot students, don't they?" right after the Kent State shooting. He remembers that kind of the whole anti-war idea was in music, and there were a lot of personal statements being made at school. And he realized that somebody was lying and that the evidence was pointing towards the government as the liars. Terry wasn't really sure why the US was in the war. She thought we were trying to do good and help an oppressed nation, and initially thought that we were the good guys. Jeff thought that it was pushed by a military-industrial complex, and that the U.S. was wanting to make money off of military equipment, and that they were thinking that profits came over everything else. Terry had two brothers that were drafted. One went to Vietnam and one went to Germany. She felt that her family was very at risk, and she also thought that the government was telling everybody the truth. And as the war started to progress more and more, she started to worry a lot more about her family. And she said that Vietnam completely changed her brother's personality. Jeff thought the draft was very scary. His older stepbrother luckily got deferred. He had friends whose little brothers were getting drafted, and then he was watching as people in his neighborhood got drafted. So as the war unfolded, Terry's point of view on U.S. policy definitely did change. Like she said a lot that she thought the U.S. was the good guys, and that the people were being told the truth by the government. And after Tonkin Gulf, all trust she had in the government completely ended. Jeff's view also changed. He was very supportive of the soldiers, and then went to almost joining protests at school. So a complete 180. Some personal experiences that shaped views. Terry used the quote, "She drank the Kool-Aid." She trusted the news sources. And then she found out it was about money and power, and that the people in charge didn't value other people's lives. Jeff said that the opposition was very, very present in school, which changed his views a lot, and that there was talk beyond what was coming from the news, from friends who had family or other friends that were in Vietnam. After the war ended, both Terry and Jeff said that their views were reinforced. Terry started thinking a lot more of what for in terms of going to war, and that we didn't learn the lessons that we needed to learn. And then Jeff said just that the U.S. made a really big mistake. So for the question, during the war years, did they believe that President Johnson and Robert McNamara correctly analyzed the situation? Terry said that they didn't have the right knowledge to analyze the situation correctly, and that they didn't have enough historical education to know what was going on. And they didn't know enough about the Vietnamese people. And one quote that she said that I thought was really cool was, "Know before you go." Jeff at the time thought that they did analyze the situation correctly, but then in '73, he realized that it really wasn't the right course of action or the correct analyzation of the situation. In reference to the quote, "Human beings must stop killing other human beings," Terry just kind of thought that it was hard to hold thoughts and actions in separate spaces, because basically we were seeing troops being sent like over and over again to Vietnam, but then McNamara was saying, "Oh yeah, we really need to stop killing each other." So like he was really trying to make the two coexist, and it wasn't working very well. And then Jeff was talking about how not killing others is a basic tenet for any religion or faith belief, and that you can't kill others to live in a civil world, and that McNamara acknowledged it, but that doesn't hold with the power that he was given. And that also the people didn't know who or how was controlling what media was being given to the people in the U.S. In reference to the quote, how much evil do we need to do in order to do good? Terry said that we see this in all scales, even today, small things like, oh, I drive a car to work and that's polluting the planet, but then I come to work and I try and do good and help other people. Jeff said it's a balance of respecting life, and it was a balance that was not maintained. As far as memories, Terry said that her home life was drastically affected. There was permanent damage to everybody in her house when her brother came back. And she felt like she could never really be a true patriot because she felt she was lied to. Jeff saw a lot of really strong anti-war in the graduating classes above him, so 1970 to 1972. and that the upperclassmen were protesting, and a lot of the underclassmen looked up to them, and so that's what they were seeing. What lessons? Terry summed it up in humility and accountability. Jeff said we were being led by old, rich, conservative white men, and that the leaders let down the voters, military, and the country. He said that we should not place full trust in the government because they were able to sacrifice lives without angst, and to make sure to fact check and examine what you're being told in the news and by the government, and to watch and read quality news. He also said don't expect recognition of mistake or an apology. Right and wrong don't normally get settled, and it just gets smoothed over so that we can keep moving forward. And that if the people in power don't examine what has happened or is happening and all get on the same page, then we can't make any progress. And that all over the world, people are really bad at denying the evidence when tragedies like this happen. His example was the Holocaust, and how there's all sorts of evidence and people are like, oh no, the Holocaust hasn't happened, like it wasn't a thing. Terry talked about how at the time they were heavily taught the golden rule, which is do unto others as you wish to have done unto you, and then told to go kill other human beings, which she had a really hard time like equating the two. And that how soldiers were expected to return to society completely normal without any help, and that kind of just fueled a lot of paranoia. And Jeff kind of touched on that as well, and how the soldiers had nobody to talk to and were kind of just dumped back into society. He said he remembered hearing that soldiers were burning their medals in uniform at draft card burnings, and that also soldiers in battle would lie on their backs like a beetle with their arms and legs in the air, hoping to get shot, thinking that if they sacrificed a limb, they would get out and have a chance to live, and that they didn't feel very hopeful.
My God, that was a lot. I mean, they really talked to, that was a good conversation. Did they both go to Helena High, or is it?
No, Terry was an Anaconda.
Anaconda, yeah, that's what I couldn't remember that. And they knew a lot of people. Well, very good job. Yeah, they call it the $1 million wound. Yeah, so they might get wounded and not be permanently hurt.
Yeah.
Good job, very good. And they had some good points there. They're definitely right about the people who are wrong don't expect accountability. All right. Are you ready? Thumbs up.
All right, so I did my grandpa Dennis. That is my dad's stepdad. So he's like my only living relative that was drafted. He was drafted in September of '66, but so he was getting trained to be a wire like maintenance for like antenna, radio, and all that. But while doing that at Fort Ord in California, one of them blew up on him, and it put splinters all in his like left thigh, and he still has some in his femur.
What?
So like the telephone pole exploded.
Oh, okay, that's.
Yeah. So it's his entire left leg was scarred, and it still is kind of gross. So and after that he was supposed to go to Vietnam, but after that he was transferred to Fort Rucker, Alabama, because they couldn't have him go. So he worked for Supply for a year and a half. So he was stationed in Alabama until September of '68. He wasn't a big fan of being drafted. He was pretty irritated that he had to be drafted. His family also kind of was, but they were glad that he was drafted because it'd make a man out of himself, they said, because he was kind of a hellion, in his words. He was kind of not a good kid. But so he originally wasn't very politically active. He didn't understand politics all that well. But after being drafted, he was very anti-Johnson, very anti-McNamara. He, in his words, he said because of that he would never vote Democrat, and he hasn't ever. He's very, very heavily Republican. So that's very, very adamant about that. So he served the 2 years. He did get ranked E5 through Supply, I guess. I don't know how you do that, but he did. Him and his buddy were drafted at the same time. His buddy Bill Davis, both from California and both from the LA area. They were drafted like 2 days apart, which he thought was pretty weird. They worked at the same place, and they were just drafted. I don't know. The draft board decided to get them, I guess. When he was, in high school still because he was graduated like 64 or something like that. He knew about Vietnam, but he didn't fully understand it. He thought it was kind of dumb because he saw the people on the streets, his like friends, some of the other people he knew like began to disappear, get drafted. So he was anti-draft like pretty much as soon as he came out of high school. But then he was drafted, the whole thing. He said he was lucky that he didn't go to Vietnam because his Bill Davis ended up going and ended up dying like 69. They were trained to do the same job. He didn't go. Bill went. He died. Other friends of his passed away too, just through conflict and other. One was from Agent Orange exposure. Also, he died in like 78 from cancer complications. So that my grandpa, it really messed with him. There was other stuff that happened, especially in '68. The MLK assassination, when he was stationed in Alabama, he saw the race riots across the South, and he thought that their like compound was going to get attacked because they had protesters outside like throwing stuff at him. That really messed him up too. So he has some problems from that. Yeah, it really messed him up. He gave me a few words of advice for the next generation. Said, don't trust the communists, which he thinks are the Democrats. I don't know. I just wrote it down. We said we need to save the Constitution, so like no altercation to it. Alternate. He wants us to be more politically active, like, research politicians, know what they stand for, which I thought was kind of weird because he's a weird conservative.
Well,
I mean,
he went through some things. So,
yeah,
we'll-
he's got some
we'll let it
problems.
go.
He got some problems, but he wanted younger leadership. He didn't want these, really old people in power, which is weird because he likes Trump. So he's very,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
We're down what he said. Yeah, but
Did you know much about this before? Did you know?
no, I had no idea. I thought he like avoided the draft because he was talking. He wanted to go to Canada. Like, he really thought about it, but his parents made him stay, and then he ended up getting drafted. He was gonna leave in he said late 65. After he graduated, he wanted to go on a trip and then just stay there pretty much. But his parents wouldn't let him.
He ended up getting drafted anyways.
Yeah, no, but then the whole telephone pole, and he ended up staying here. So he said he was really lucky. He also was really bad at the wire maintenance, if you can tell. Yeah,
Yeah.
he wasn't good at his job.
Well, I gotta ask, how did it explode?
I don't know. He said he was fixing some wires and something touched and kaboom.
Oh, so the electric.
Yeah,
geez.
it blew
Okay.
up the top of the pole. He was blown. He fell 15 feet. I don't know how he survived.
Okay, he can believe anything he wants.
Yeah.
All right.
He was
So, all right, good job. All right, so I think we have everyone today. Everyone's gone, right? So you're supposed to do 2 interviews. So I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So we have one tomorrow, and then I told you. Remember we watched? I thought that Vietnam show, the one we documentary was really good. So we're gonna watch the next one. Sound good? So we'll start that as soon as Alex is done with this. We'll get started on that. And I'm gonna move. I was gonna have a quiz on the part 4 of the reading on Thursday. But how about we do it on, wait for it, Monday. Sound good? Yeah.
Will the second part of this documentary have that one guy that?
Yeah, that's part of the reason I wanna. I was supposed to ask you. It's such a good show. What do you want to do?